Hello, Sharks. I am Jonathan Little for PokerCoaching.com, here today with another hand from the GG Millions. This is a $10,000 buy-in tournament that takes place every week on GG Poker. We are heads up between two great players. We have David Sepp, probably saying it wrong. I don't know a ton about him. He's in there battling in the high stakes all the time. And Bert Stevens, poker coaching coach. Bert Stevens has been a poker coaching coach for quite a while now, and he regularly streams his games live for the Poker Coaching Premium members, and he also goes through all of his big, deep runs with Michael Acevedo, the author of Modern Poker Theory. Let me just show you over here. Here we have Play and Explained with Bert Stevens, where he gets in there, he plays, he explains. He's in there battling high stakes on GG, like right here, winning the $800 marathon, final tabling $2,500 tournament. 2 final tables. He guarantees a final table every single time he streams, and he tends to get it done. He was recently ranked the #1 online player in the entire world, and he is making content for the Poker Coaching Premium members. Check it out at pokercoaching.com/premium. Here are all of the recent reviews he made with Michael Acevedo. As you see, reviewing 5K win, $25,000 buy-in win on GG Poker. Down here, there's another $10,000 final table review. Anyway, if you have not checked it out already, check it out. Bert gets in there, he battles, he plays loose, splashy, he applies aggression in spots where I think other people do not, and that makes him very, very, very difficult to play against. Let's take a look at this hand where he is playing heads up for the win, pretty deep stacked. He has 57 effective big blinds. David raises it up with ace-9, which is perfectly fine and standard. With 4-3 suited, you can do whatever you want. You can 3-bet, you can call, don't fold. Bert does opt to 3-bet, and now this ace-9 has a pretty easy call in my mind. Flop comes queen, 10, 8, 2 spades right off the bat. Bert is in a pretty rough spot because he has zip and pip, as Mike Sexton says. This is a spot where, well, what do? I want you to think about this spot and take a second and write in the comment section below what you would do with the 4-3 of hearts when you 3-bet on this board. I want you to pause the video and write what you would do in the comment section below. Would you check? Would you bet small, like 500K? Would you bet medium, like $1 million? Or would you bet big, like 1.5 million? Pause the video and write what you would do below. All right, this board is pretty bad. While it does connect pretty well with your strong re-raising range, it also connects really well with David's calling range, because David is going to have either a queen, a jack, a 10, a 9, or an 8 a lot of the time, right? And all of those hands are going to feel inclined to continue against a bet whenever you make a non-big bet. So in this scenario, I think Bert should probably either just go pretty big or just check and give up. And if I was in this scenario, I think I would just check fold, because it is so likely David has a hand that can continue on the flop. And if you think about what's going to happen, if Bert bets any amount and David calls, can Bert really double barrel on any turns? I mean, like, not really, right? Because no turns are going to give him any additional equity at all. And so for that reason, I think this is a spot where you just have to 3-bet pre-flop, which is perfectly fine. You get a really, really bad board for this particular hand, and it's a board that connects very well with David's range. So I think you just got to check fold. Let's see what Bert does. He does opt for the check. Yay, we got one right one time. If you said bet there, I don't despise it, but this is definitely a spot where you just cannot continuation bet 100%. When you're out of position and the board connects with your opponent's range, and you just have nothing, like literal nothing, you just got to give up. Now, what should David do here? Should David bet or should he check? Well, he doesn't really want to get check raised here, right? So in this scenario, David wants to ask, what hands is Bert likely checking? Bert's either checking with just some stone garbage, which you actually beat with the ace high, or he's checking with something like a marginal made hand, like a weak queen or a 10, right? These are hands that don't necessarily want to bet and get all the money in, although they're fine. And these are hands that will likely just check and induce bluff some portion of the time. Not always, but some portion of the time. Bert could also be just straight up slow playing with like pocket 8s, pocket queens, pocket aces, right? These are all hands that would consider checking to try to induce a bluff. So I don't think David wants to bet because he loses to all the hands that are in great shape, and he actually has some number of outs against those with the gut shot and the backdoor flush draw and the ace. And whenever Bert is just stone dead, he's in fine shape. So I think this is a pretty easy check for him too. Check, check. Turn brings the 6. Okay, so think about the range we just gave Bert Stevens to check the flop. A really good hand, a very decent marginal made hand like a queen or a 10, or an airball, stone airball. Okay, if that's the range we have to check flop, you want to be betting some of that on the turn, right? Like if you have a queen here, you almost certainly want to bet it because it's almost always the best hand. If you have pocket aces, you want to be betting it because it's almost always the best hand. And now the board is very draw heavy to the point that you don't really want to give another free card, right? It was already kind of draw heavy on the flop. Now it's really draw heavy on the turn. So this is a spot where I think Bert should be bluffing. He wants to be bluffing though, not with necessarily hands that have good equity anymore, because if he bets with a hand like, let's say he did have king 9, right? King 9 for a gut shot. He doesn't really, actually double gut shot. He doesn't really want to bet any amount because if he faces an all-in, which will happen sometimes, he then has to fold that hand that has lots of equity. So in this scenario, when Bert's going to bet the turn, he usually wants to have his very strong hands for the most part, or like good hands that don't mind protection like a queen. And then there's some real garbage. And funny enough, this hand is one of the few hands in this range that is legitimately real garbage, right? You may say, if we bet the turn, are we betting again on the river? Probably not. Sometimes though, sometimes. And the reason for that is because when we bet turn, we're going to have all of our strong hands. Like say we do have pocket 8s, right? We want to bet the turn and jam the river, so that lets us have some bluffs. And try to come up with some bluffs in this scenario that makes sense, right? Like if Bert's sitting here with, I don't know, ace jack, he's not going to want to bet because if he bets and gets shoved, it's pretty bad. So he doesn't really want to bet with flush draws and straight draws that cannot call a shove. So what other draws does he have? I mean, I guess he could have random hands with like a 7. King 7 maybe. Maybe that's a hand you could bet and then fold to a raise. But like even then, you have a gut shot, right? I think probably the weak gut shots like that are going to be okay to go for it. But then also whatever just stone garbage you have should probably go for it as well. And realize it's kind of hard to just have total garbage in this spot, right? Because everything else has a gut shot or a pair, right? So this is a scenario where I think you do want to make sure you're looking very hard for bluffs, especially if you do know that you have some premium made hands in your range that want to bet. And I think that's definitely the case. And when we are betting in this scenario, I think Bert should actually go pretty big because he is betting polarized, right? Whenever he does have a premium hand, he wants to bet an amount that's going to allow him to reasonably jam river. So I think here, if he bets something like $1 million or $1.2 million, that's going to result in David feeling a lot of pressure with his random ace highs, like ace 5 suited. Also, a lot of pressure with stuff like pocket 5s, right? Even if he has a pair, like let's say 6-5 suited, he's probably just going to fold to a pretty big bet, right? So in this scenario, you actually do get a pretty good amount of hands to fold immediately. And then maybe we go for it on the river every once in a while, depending on how it runs out. So I like a sizable bet here. This is not a spot to go small, by the way. A lot of people would make the error here of betting small, like 500K, but then all that stuff I just named, like any pair, any ace high that has any additional equity at all, is going to call every time, right? So in this spot, if you are going to bet, you want to be very polarized. Your best hands, your garbage. And I think this is one of the few hands that makes sense. Let's see if he goes for it. I also don't hate just check folding, but by the way, if you do check this card on this hand on the turn, and it goes check, check on the turn, you better bluff it on the river. Okay? Let's see if what he does. I'm going to assume whatever Bert does is right. He does go for the big bet. Yes! I promise you, I actually haven't watched this hand before this video, so we're nailing it today. I've been studying the Bert Stevens videos at pokercoaching.com. All right, he does go for the big bet, 1.1, setting up a river jam. Over to David. Annoying spot, right? Well, this is exactly what I was talking about, right? Whenever Bert bets this size, it just puts David in a really nasty scenario. Gosh. What would I do here? Here we have a gut shot, right? Just a gut shot and an overcard. What is that, 7 outs? No, do we have double gut shot? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen. Oh my gosh. I can't read the board. Sorry. We have double gut shot. That's a lot of outs. I think the play here is to probably call, because I have to think that when Bert has stone garbage, he's not necessarily always going to bluff it on the river. And then you can go check, check on the river and win sometimes. Not a lot, but sometimes. Like you beat ace 7, right, and king 7. And he's not necessarily going to bluff all of those. If he does have a queen or a set or two pair, like any good hand, he's just always going to call a shove. So that'd be really, really bad. That said, if he does have a hand like queen 4, you actually have a decent number of outs, right? You can get any 7, any jack, and any ace, right? So that's actually a lot of outs. So is this hand a hand to call or to jam? I think if he had a little bit more showdown value with like 9-8, I think it's way better to call because then you actually beat a few more hands, right? With this ace 9, is this a shove? Nasty spot. Funny enough, we could have done 3 quizzes on this hand. Burt on the flop, Burt on the turn, ace 9 on the turn. This may be the trickiest one of them all. I actually don't know what the right play is here. I think with less showdown value, like king 9, I think that probably becomes a better hand to rip it in with than ace 9 here. The question is, does ace high have any showdown value at all? Like, I think 9-8's a pretty reasonable hand to call, whereas ace 9 is somewhere between like king 9 and that 9-8. You can probably go either way between call or jam. It's close though. It's close. I'm going to presume whatever David does is right. The problem is that whenever Burt has a good hand, he just always calls and you're always in pretty bad shape. That said, 11 outs. 11 outs is a pretty good number against some of the likely hands. The problem is that sometimes he just has like a set. Every once in a while he got tricky and has a straight because that is how Burt operates. Anyway, David does go for the shove, and I mean this is certainly defensible. Definitely a reasonable play. And obviously Burt folds here. If Burt does have a queen, he is of course going to call. This is a spot where notice I don't think Burt expected to get jammed on very often. He gave the WTF you suck. And I kind of agree with that. This is a spot where I don't think you should expect to get shoved on very often because Burt should be very polarized, right? And if he is very polarized, in turn, David should not be shoving all that often. And that said, really the only the only hands to make sense to be bluffing here are hands like this, hands that kind of lack showdown value but have pretty good equity. So I like the way both players played this hand. This was a little bit out of line by both players, but I think at the end of the day, it was good. Again, make sure you check out pokercoaching.com. We have all sorts of content by Burt, including him reviewing this exact tournament a while back from November last year where he made a deep run in the 10K. Also, in the 25K just a few months ago, he won on GG again. Burt cleans up on GG, but not today. He ended up taking second place, but hey, another second place in a $10,000 buy-in online tournament is not too shabby. That's going to be it for today. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, click like, click subscribe, click the notification bell below, and have a great, great day. Hello. Do I have your attention? Good. You know I love to give away lots of free strategy advice here on my YouTube channel, so do me a quick favor. Can you click the subscribe button right here and right down here below? Thank you. See you in the next video.